To be honest, I suppose I kind of saw this coming. That's a good cup of coffee. Link in the description for that. I've been happily using the Nikon Z30 just kind of around for like B-roll on a gimbal, and it's been working great in short little increments. I've been using that for my guest camera and the podcasts, and you know, it overheats at about the 50-minute mark. That's indoors, 4K, 24. I'm not talking hot card either, I'm talking about shutdown. Now, rumor has it that the Nikon Z6iii here is not having any overheating issues, and that's being used outside. And so that is kind of why I ended up with a Nikon Z6iii. Now, you may notice right here that this is the 24-70 f4 kit. Why in the world did I get a 24-70 f4S kit? Especially since I'm a prime guy. Well, the Nikon Z6iii body only is actually not available anywhere. No matter where you go, it's going to say temporarily out of stock or temporarily back ordered or just back ordered. So I contacted a local photographer who I have sold one lens to. They have not acquired a mid-range zoom. The 24-70 f4S is absolutely incredible with great color saturation and fantastic sharpness. So I will be selling this 24-70 f4S to that photographer for exactly what it cost in this kit. And so I got this kit for the price of the body only. Before we get into this box and check out my first impressions and see what is inside the box of the Nikon Z6iii, I want to let you know there is plenty of photography content that will be coming with the Nikon Z6iii. But that's not necessarily why I bought it. I am absolutely in love with my Nikon Z9 and Z8 files. And so those are still, look at me, I'm beating up the microphone. So those are still going to be my main photography cameras. As I said, the Nikon Z30, I absolutely love it. The image quality is fantastic, but it doesn't do everything that I need it to do. That's where the insane video features of the Nikon Z6iii is going to come in. It's still lightweight, it'll still fit on my smaller gimbal that I absolutely love. It should last for the podcast, which I am shooting one right after I make this video, and it should do perfectly fine, although just a tad bigger than the Z30 for my B-roll footage and the in the field. Hopefully I can still get some kind of selfie stuff going on. We'll see. We got to get into this, we got to check it out and feel the weight, and so let's see what we have. We have all of the paperwork and warranty and stuff that's important. We're going to keep all of this for when we sell this someday. Maybe sell it, maybe I'll use it until it absolutely fails. That's the weird thing about this YouTube thing. I find things that I need, and as soon as something else comes along that'll do the job better or easier for the sake of the content being better. You think photography is an expensive endeavor? YouTube photography is much more expensive. We have the classic Nikon lens sock. And this is absolutely not going to fit on my head like a chef hat. Wow, I haven't used one of these in a long time. I forgot how like robust and heavy these things are. The 24-70 f4S is an absolutely fantastic lens, and at zwadephoto.com/theopticexplorer, you can actually see a score that I gave to this lens. It scores very, very high. It's a remarkable lens. I've used it plenty in the early days of the Z mount, but I do not have a use for it anymore, which is why it's getting sold. But it feels like a really high quality lens. Don't sleep on this thing. This is a kit lens, yes, but this thing hits way above what a kit lens should. I would argue that this isn't even fair to be called a kit lens. We are, however, not really going to keep this, and so we will put this into this lens sock, fold it up nicely, put it back into the foam, give the plastic to, and we will set this off to the side so we can give a totally unused copy of the lens as promised to the photographer that wanted to buy it. I'm not going to take this out because I have a feeling I'll have a hard time getting it back in, but this is all of the outside cable hold things that I've actually never used. We have the typical Nikon strap. This one looks like it's a little bit different. They got a little bit different of a design on this one. They got a couple of stripes that I don't remember seeing on any others. But I don't like regular neck straps. I don't like these. And so we're going to set that to the side, and instead we're going to give a plug to a sponsor of the channel, Peak Design. In the description below, you can find something much nicer than the one that Nikon includes. However, we are going to keep this in case we ever do sell this camera in the future. We're going to give everything to the person we sell to. We've got the lens hood for the 24-70 f4S. And we're going to put that right back in there for our friend, the local photographer. All right, we have a USB-C to USB-C cable. This is probably intended for charging, mostly because we do not get a charger with the Nikon Z6 III. I understand that a lot of people are doing the plug into the wall kind of charging. I don't like that. I don't find that doesn't make me feel safe. Like if the power goes out and we get a surge or whatever like that, I just don't feel comfortable with that idea. I would much rather have a battery charger. And I think at any price point that should be included. Mainly because generally whenever I sell my equipment, I sell it directly to other photographers and I want them to be able to charge their battery. So if I ever do decide to get rid of this, I will probably end up just buying a charger. That way I could include it for free to whoever I sell it to. This already feels bigger than the Z6 II. I don't think on paper it's actually that big of a difference, but it feels like it's a much bigger difference. This, right off the bat, I'll just say, it feels kind of cheap. Feels like a lot of plastic in here, and the Z8 actually kind of feels the same way. So I've got the Nikon Z5 here just for a little reference. One of the things I noticed whenever I first got the Nikon Z5 was that it did in the hand feel a little bit cheaper than the Nikon Z6s and 6.2s and 7s and 7.2s. Just in the hand, it felt a little more thin, I think was the word that I chose. And that's like thin-walled, I guess. It feels like more plastic. They all have about the same amount of plastic on the outside. It's mostly plastic on the outside, but it feels almost too light to be super, super well made. Now, when you hold the Nikon Z9, it doesn't feel quite as thin. You hold the Nikon Z8, and it feels kind of the same thinness as, say, the Nikon Z5 and now the Nikon Z6 III. Although I will say, that aside, this feels better in the hand as far as the grip and the hand holdability. It feels better than this, which is the Z5, which is the same form factor as the 6s and 6.2 and 7 and 7.2. Definitely doesn't look like a huge size difference, but it feels just better. This is something I was excited to check out because I can tell you from Canon, their flip out screens feel like absolute trash and thin. And the Nikon screens feel a little bit better than that. They don't have as much kind of play moving this way, up and down, which it shouldn't do. The Canons feel like that hinge is just very, very cheap. Now, personally, I'm not crazy on flippy screens, except in the use case of why I bought this. I bought this because I need the flippy screen for what I'm using the Z30 for. You know, the B-roll and the selfie talk. And also, I set it up like this for the podcasts. This is facing the model, and the screen is flipped out facing me so I can monitor. So I need it on this one. I would be totally thrilled if this is the only camera that Nikon does this for. If they ever come out with a Z7 III, let it be a normal screen that I like. Let's give a feel to the buttons and see what the clickiness is. I really like that I have a full-size HDMI because that is exactly the same setup that my Atomos is already set up on the Z9 for like the podcasts. I like that. It fits in better. I don't like the smaller ones. They're finicky. They feel like they're going to fall out, and sometimes they do. The command dials feel really good, and in fact, one second. This is the Nikon Z8, and while it's a different style, this one sits on top, and this one kind of rotates into the camera body a little bit. They both feel really, really nice. They don't feel cheap. It feels as nice. It's nice and responsive. A little bit of kind of a feedback on that. It's not loud, but you can feel it under your finger. You can feel it clicking. I like that. That's nice. I said at one point that I would be super happy if Nikon just went with the super high readout, no more mechanical shutters, because I like having the sensor shield. We don't have that here. I'm going to end up missing the sensor shield. Check out our function buttons. They feel good. One of the complaints was these little strap ports here. They are kind of in a bad spot now that I think about it. But for me, I always take those off anyway because they get in the way. And I tend to mount everything from the 1/4-20 mount in the bottom. And then I usually put like a peak design on the other side. I generally take that off. So it's fine for me, but I absolutely see like why people were calling that a design flaw, because that's really goofy. It doesn't open all the way. To be fair though, I'm pretty sure if you take this plastic piece off, if you take this little tiny plastic piece off, it actually moves out of the way and it opens all the way. And so now I'm kind of back to thinking that that's kind of a silly complaint. It's not that big of a damn deal. Even with that on, you could just move it out of the way. It'll be fine. So yeah, overall, it feels like a Nikon. The ergonomics are fantastic. I will say it does feel a little thin. So does the Nikon Z8. But how it holds, just being slightly bigger, it feels a lot more like a DSLR. Now, I like that. I like that particular feel. Although I can see some people still clinging on to the fact that isn't mirrorless supposed to be smaller and lighter? No, that is really only the case with like the Z30 and the Z50. Everything else, by the time you put these remarkable Nikon lenses on, that's not going to be the case. And it's the same across all the brands. The best lenses you can possibly get aren't particularly low profile. They're not particularly lightweight. They're better made, so they feel heavier. They feel more robust. We have to give up that idea that mirrorless is smaller and lighter. Listen, somebody is going to find a reason to complain about everything. And so my first impression, just the fact that it feels less metallic than the previous versions, I think Nikon's doing pretty good. The guts of this is what's selling it. This is going to be an incredible seller for Nikon. It's exactly what everyone has been asking for that didn't want to cough up the dough for a Z8 and the Z9. Other than that, Nikon, you cheapskate, a battery charger should be in every single camera that is purchased new. Not getting a battery charger is something you might expect off of the used market, right? If you buy from KEH, you might not get a battery charger. I think we should have a battery charger. Even if you don't like it, just throw it in there. If you haven't bought a Nikon Z6iii yet, you've kind of been on the fence, and you decide you want to actually get one, it helps out the channel if you use the link in the description below. Cool, I'm ready to get some work done. I'm pretty sure I left the battery in the box, and luckily I have 2 chargers for EN EL15s. So I'm gonna get this charged up, because I've got to shoot a podcast. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Z Wade, the Z Wade, and Z Wade Photo. Stay sharp, YouTube.